Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Burian. I'm a senior in aerospace engineering. This recording is supplement to the SolidWorks workshop that was held by AIAA and ASME on September 12th. I'm going to be basically going through everything that we went over in that, plus a little bit more. So first and foremost, we're going to be going over how to make a simple part, how to make a more difficult part, and how to make assemblies, how to save every kind of different file, and also how to make a basic drawing. Okay, I'm going to start with the following. So when you open SolidWorks, there's a chance that there's a license error that might pop up if you open SolidWorks on your personal computer. If so, you're going to open Solid Network License Manager. You're going to go to the server list and add the following server. Go back to license usage and select that license. Select that server, and then you will be able to close that and open SolidWorks 2022. So if you open it on one of the desktops, you'll see that there's a bunch of different options. Or if the desktop's in the computer lab, you're going to want to open SolidWorks 2022, that one. And you're going to come open to a start page similar to this. You probably won't have all these other different parts, but it's going to look something like this. We have part assembly drawing, and all these other options up top here. So where we're going to start is talking about the difference between parts, assemblies, and drawings, as well as some important settings. So first things first, you might get a pop-up for the first time you open SolidWorks, what units you want. This is where you can choose your units. I, as well as ASME and AIAA, typically work in IPS, which is inch pound seconds, and the standard we use is ANSI for most of our work. And visibility, this is basically a tool that if let's say I open a new part or I make a new part, you can also, if you click out of here, you can always make a new part by clicking on the new and part assembly drawing. I'm going to start with a part. When you open up a new part, one of the first things you're going to want to do is you want to check your settings for your units. You can always check right here. And to choose which items are my visibility options, you can see I have a bunch of options here. Each of them will have a little message that pops up. I don't know why it's not coming up right now. This is an axis. This is to turn on the grid when you sketch. These are to control the visibility of the three main planes, the primary planes, for sketching. And there's a bunch of different settings here. Usually there's a little pop-up that comes when you hover over them. Right now my computer's a little slow, so that's not coming up, but there's a bunch of different options you have there. You can play around with those to see what you personally like. Now we're gonna go over some sketch features. So this is basically the 2D aspect of SolidWorks. So the way the software works is you work in 2D, and then from there you can create those 2D objects and extrude them or pull them out of the plane you're drawing on to make them 3D. So we'll start by, there's also a bunch of tabs here. You can control which tabs you have visible. So there's a bunch of different options here. I like to pretty much keep the ones I have open right now. The main ones you ever really use are features, sketch. I don't ever really use markup. I use evaluate once in a while. But pretty much those three are the ones I use for when I'm making a part. So first I'm going to go to sketch. And now it's asking me to choose a plane which I want to sketch on. So for right now, I'll choose the front plane. This will be a little bit more important later on, but right now I'll just choose the front plane. So if you see, I have the grid on. I can control if I want that or not by just clicking on Control Visibility of Sketch Grid. Here I can show the primary plane, so if I want to hide it, those planes disappear. For right now, I'm going to keep those on. I can also control if I want to keep the coordinate system on or not. I can control basically if that point will pop up. Right now, I'll keep the grid on and I'm going to keep the planes on. So we're going to go over some of the different options you have here. I'm basically going to teach you how to use them. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I'm going to show basically kind of the basics of how to sketch and how to learn how to use every different tool. So first and foremost, I always start every sketch that I make from the origin. That way you have a reference to at least, or the software knows where you're starting from. Very important that it knows where you're starting from, or you won't be fully defined. So I'll make a quick little box. And you see when I close the loop, it turns to a dark gray shaded color. Now, if I want to click on circle, you'll see there's different options here. I can choose perimeter circle or circle. And if you're looking in the left side of the screen here, the numbers correlate to where you click and in which order you click. So if I do a circle, it's going to have me click somewhere first. Wherever I first click will be the center of my circle. You can tell that because it's in the center. So say I want to click and make the circle here. And now my second click is going to set the diameter or radius of that circle. So when I click here, now I have a circle within my square. You can see the shading is different. So that means if I were to extrude this part, which we'll do later, you'll see that this circle, which is a darker shaded color, will be empty space, while the lighter shade will be solid. Okay, now I'm going to click off that part for right now. And we're going to go over some very basic dimensioning stuff. So we have a bunch of different drop downs here. For the most part, you'll never need anything besides just Smart Dimension. It's able to pretty much figure out what you want from that. So let's say I want to choose the height of this little rectangle here. I can do one of two things. One, I can just click on the line, this vertical line on the side, or number two, I can click here and here, and then it will give me the dimension in between, or I can click here and here, and it will give me the dimension in between those 2 points. If you want to get rid of this, the way I'm getting this dimension to disappear like so, is by pressing the escape key on Windows. So I'll dimension this line over here. I'll dimension this line right here, and I'm going to change it to 1 inch. And because my custom or my units are already in inches, if I hit enter right now, it's going to automatically set it to 1 inch. You can choose to dimension things in other units, and then it will convert to whatever the unit system you're using is. So if I wanted to dimension this one as 25 millimeters and 25 mm dimension, and it will change it to that value in inches. And now if I want to dimension the diameter of this circle, it'll either do it this way if I go horizontally or vertically, or I can go on a diagonal and I can get it to dimension like this, which I prefer. So I'm going to set this one to 0.5 inches. Okay, so you can see now that all of the lines of the rectangle / square are in black, versus the circle is still in blue. So if it's black, it means that that line is fully dimensioned. If it is in blue, that means it is not. So you always want to have a sketch fully dimensioned before you exit out of it. So if I want to dimension it, I need to now, I've I've told the software how big I want the circle to be, but now I need to choose where I want it to be. So I can reference this center point of the circle to this line, this line, this line, or this line, or a point. I can do whatever I want, but I need to make sure that I dimension it in both the X and Y dimension, in both X and Y directions. So I want it to be 0.5. And I can also click on outside the circle, click here, and it'll get me 0.5 as well. Now if I hit escape, I click off the part, you can see that it now says fully defined on the bottom. Next to it, it says editing sketch 1, which is the sketch I'm doing right now. At this point, I'm going to exit the sketch. And now I can see where my sketch is in my 3 dimensions and rotate it around by the way I'm able to rotate is by clicking the middle wheel on the mouse and dragging it around. If I ever zoom out too far and I lose my part, I can click this zoom to fit and it will bring it back into the screen. You can zoom in or zoom out the scroll wheel of the mouse. If I want to move sideways, I can hit Control and then hit the center wheel on the mouse to move the part around. Say I don't want these planes anymore, I can get rid of them, and now I just see my sketch in 3-dimensional space. If I want to change the background or the scene, I have the options up here to do so. So I can change it to plain white. If I'm taking a screenshot and putting it into a document, you usually want a white background, so you can do that. You can choose to a rooftop. You can choose to various different options. Right now, I'll keep it as plain white. Okay, so now let's say I want to make this part, this 2D sketch, into a 3D object. So I'm going to hit sketch 1, make sure this is highlighted. All of the lines are highlighted in blue, and this is also highlighted in blue. And then I'm going to hit extruded boss/base. At this point, it'll bring me into a figure with this pop-up on the side. And I have the ability to change how far it gets extruded in this direction. So I can't change the dimensions in the XY plane, but I can change them in the Z direction, which you can see in the bottom left. So I can change it there, or if I want to be more precise, I can change it over here. Let's say I want to make it into a 1 by 1 by 1 cube with a hole in the middle. At this point, I can change the direction which it gets extruded. I can also, this isn't really applicable right now, but there's also a bunch of different options here that you can do. I could do mid-plane, and it will extend 0.5 inches in both directions for a total of 1 inch. But right now, I'm just going to do blind. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. You can also hit OK over here as well, the check marks. So now I have my simple little cube with a hole down the middle of it. Okay. Now we're going to try to save this part. So now that my part is done, I'm going to hit save. It's going to bring me to whatever folder I was last in. I'll go to my downloads folder for right now. And you can name your part however you want. And you always want to choose SolidWorks part at this point. Unless you're trying to 3D print the part, then you save it as a .stl file. But you always want to first save it as a SolidWorks part, and then you can save it the second time for a .stl if you're going to 3D print it. But if you want to be able to ever edit the part again, you need to save it as a SolidWorks part file. I'm going to name it and then save it. Right now, I don't want to save this part, so I'm going to just hit cancel. Now I'm going to open a new part because we have a predetermined sketch that we're going to create. So you can see now I've gone back to my default background or my default scene, and now everything is back to my default settings, which might be different than yours. Okay, so we've explained or we've examined some of the features, but we haven't gone over relations at all, or patterns really, or trimming. So, and we've only gone over lines and circles. So to go over some more things, we're going to go over this example here. So first things first, we're going to make a horizontal line here, a vertical line here. Then we're going to leave that be for now. Another vertical line, a horizontal line, and then connect here. So you always want to choose a plan of attack before you start making a part. It's much easier to go about it that way. I'm going to go over to Sketch again. I'm going to choose the front plane. Again, doesn't really matter at this stage in the game. There's a couple different ways that I can go about making this part. One of them that I'm going to decide to do is a corner rectangle. So again, my point 1 and my point 2 are the two corners. You don't need to do this corner first or that corner, doesn't matter. I'm going to put my planes on, and I'm going to put my grid on, just to make it a little easier. So again, I'm going to start from the center here, and I'm going to make that bottom piece right now. Okay. From this point, I'm going to change to a vertical line, extend up to here, hit escape to get out of there, click back on the line. I'm going to put another line right about here. And you can see it locks in when I go 90 degrees, 0 degrees, 45. At any 45 or 90 degree angle, it gives me a little lock. And these green boxes that get created are called relations. So we're going to use these a little bit more in a second, but for right now, what I'm going to do is show you guys how to make a trim. So I want this piece to be open so that the shaded area, the shaded region can travel into there. So what I'm going to do is hit trim entities. A bunch of different options here. I'm going to start with power trim. So the way power trim works is you click and it drags a line, and until you cross a line, it just drags around. But once you cross a line that's already drawn, it will delete that line. So at this point, I have now deleted that line. And let's say I want to delete this line too, because I don't like how they're separate. I want them to be one line together. I'm going to also delete this line. I'm going to hit OK. Now we're going to go into how to make that arc at the top. So I'm going to come back to this part. There's circles, arcs, rectangles, ellipse, polygon, fillet, spline, straight slot, letters, and points. Those are your main sketching tools. Arcs, there's 3 different types of arcs. There's a center point, a tangent, and a 3-point. Tangent basically means that it's going to start as a straight line and it will slowly curve over. So for this part, I want it to be a tangent arc. I'm going to start here. You can see it stays tangent to that line as I move it around. I want it to be vertical with the line that is below it, and I want it to be straight across just like it is in the drawing. So I'm going to put it right here, and you'll see it kind of locks into place for me. Now I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to hit the drop down on the trim to find extend entities. At this point, if I click on this line here, it's going to extend this line and make it to the length and meet up with the arc. Okay. Now you can see over here, I have a tangent on this side, but I don't have that same tangent on this side. So there are multiple ways to go about this. The easiest one is just to click on one of the lines or the points that you want to make the relation from, and then hit Control or hold Control, and then click on the second line. So if I want to make these two, this arc and this line tangent, I can go over here and click tangent on the left side of my screen. Now those two will always be tangent. Okay, so at this point, I'm starting to get kind of close to what the part looks like. I'm going to make this circle over here. So let's say if I don't put it, this little yellow 2 circles that comes up, this little box means concentric. I'm gonna pretend that I don't know that right now. I'm gonna make one of my circles over here. So if I wanted to make it a concentric circle, meaning they have the same center point, I'm going to hit escape right now, because if you ever see something that's highlighted in light blue, that means you currently have it selected. And if you want to get rid of that selection, hit escape. So I'm going to click on this arc, and then I'm going to click on, I'm going to hold control and click on the circle. Now I want to make them concentric, so I'm going to click on this option down here. Now you can see it moves it to the center, so they have the same center point. Now I'm going to hit check. And now I have basic geometry besides that one, it's called a fillet in this corner over here. So I'm going to come over here, sketch fillet. You have two options. You can either click on the corner point itself or the two sides. I'm going to click on the corner point just because it's a little easier. And you can see it's made that little fillet in yellow, and it won't actually become a part and end up being a real part until I click the check mark. So now the fillet has been introduced to the part. And if I want to get rid of this, I can hit the X or the check. I'll just hit the X right now, it doesn't matter. So now I have everything in here, but my dimensions are not correct. So we're going to go in and start dimensioning everything. I'm going to start with the dimension that I already have in here with the radius. So I'm going to figure out what that's supposed to be. So it's supposed to be 0.17. I will set that first. So if you already have a dimension set, if you want to change it, you can just double click, and it allows you to edit that dimension. So that has been set now. And I want to figure out the height of this bottom part, which is 0.4. And the length on the bottom is 2.25. So I'm going to make those two dimensions right now. Start with the length. I can just click on the line itself. So when I set this dimension, it might make everything a little bit wonky. Yeah, you can see it comes out a little weird. I'm going to set this dimension here now, 3.4. So you can see my part looks nothing like it's supposed to right now, but as you keep adding dimensions, it will get a little bit cleaner. So next thing I want to do is set the height from the base of the figure to the center of those two circles. So I'm going to dimension, click on the center point here, click on the base, and you'll see it's going to be a lot larger than 1. So I'm going to make it down to 1. Becomes a little bit cleaner. And to fix everything now, I'm going to need to set the radius and the diameter of the arc in the circle. So the radius of the larger arc is 0.4. The diameter of the circle is 0.35. So this one was 0.4. And now you can see that these are still concentric, but the circle is bigger than the arc is. So at this point, I need to click here, set this diameter to 0.35, and then we will be fully dimensioned, and now our part will look like it did in the drawing. Hit escape, I can get out of there. I'm going to drag all these dimensions in, make it a little bit cleaner. And at this point, what I'm going to do is hit the zoom to fit, and now it's going to fit to my front plane. I can zoom in if I want to see my part a little bit better too. So at this point, I'm going to escape or get out of the sketch, exit the sketch, and go back to the front plane. So if I wanted to make this into a 3D part, I go to Features, Extrude, and you can see if I were to click on just this piece, it's only going to extrude that contour or that circle. So what I like to do before I hit boss extrude or extruded boss, I like to highlight sketch first. That way all of the lines are highlighted in blue. So when I extrude it, they all get extruded. And I'll make this one just 0.3 inches for right now. And that's basically that. So that's pretty much how you do a sketch. I'm going to quickly go over a couple other things that you can do. So if I want to edit the sketch now, let's say I want to change dimensions of this part, there's a couple ways I can go about it. Number one, I can double click on the part, and now I can change any dimension I want. So let's say I want this to be a little taller in the bottom, it is a 0.6. And you'll see it didn't change, but the value changed. So that what that means, and also what you can see from this little stoplight, is that the part needs to be rebuilt, or you need to rebuild this part. When I do that, then it ends up fixing all the problems. And it is now updated. Let's say I wanted to add a slot. So say I want to change the sketch and add a new feature to it. I can go edit sketch. And now I can add, let's say I want to round to this corner as well. I can add another fillet. If I wanted to change the radius before I add it, I could change it to, let's say I wanted to be 0.4 and set that now. Click on this blue box here. And I can click on this line and this line, and now it will show me what my fillet is going to look like. If I want to change it, I can change that now. I like the way that looks. I'm going to hit the green check. Get out of there. Now when I escape, my part will have that rounded edge too. So that's one way to go about making a simple part. So I'm going to go a little bit more now into the different types of constraints you can add. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to make a whole new part now. A new part. Okay. And now if I know I'm going to make it into a 3D part and not just keep it as a sketch, which majority of the time you do, I might hit extruded boss/base. And now it's going to tell me which plane do I want to sketch this cross section on, or the 2D sketch on. So I'm going to choose a front plane again, just because that's what I'm doing for today. I'll turn those two visibility items back on. And now I'm going to make a line here. I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to make a second line, but let's say instead of having it associated to this little orange square that pops up, or the yellow square, let's say I don't start from that point and I just start over here. And I make a line like this. And then I connect them over here. So whenever that yellow square pops up, you know your lines are connecting, which is what you always want. But let's say I messed up. I'm hit escape. Now I'm going to click on this point, hold control, click on this point. If I want them to be touching and close this triangle off, I can hit coincident or coincident. Now these 2 points will be together and my triangle has been created so that all the points are together. So you can see now I can try to drag it around, mess it up. It can't happen. So my current constraints on this sketch are my relations, our vertical line here. This point at the bottom is coincident with this horizontal line, which if you move over, you can see it's the top plane that I was highlighting on. So this point at the bottom is on the top plane. And let's say I lose my orientation here. What you can always do is right click and hit normal to, and I'll go back into my sketching view. But let's say I want this point to start from the origin, but I want this point to start the origin. So I'm going to click on this point, control, click on the origin, and now I can hit coincident, and my geometry completely changes, but now it's starting from the origin. And you can see that my part has been filled in gray. It didn't update before, but it was always a solid part. So now again, I can change this geometry. I can move this point around if I want. I can play around with it like this, or you can change dimensions. I'm gonna quickly show you how to make an angle. So if I click on this line and then I click on this line, if they're at an angle from each other, it'll allow you to change which angle you want it to be at. So say I want to make a 60-degree angle there. And I want this to be 3 inches long. Now this is what my triangle will look like. And exit sketch. And now because I originally clicked on the extruded boss base, you can see it already extrudes for me and brings up this pop-up menu. So I want this to be 1 inch long, or I want it to extrude 1 inch. And now I have my little triangle. Okay, so that's the basics of sketching and how to create an individual extrude. Let's say now I want to make a circle that comes off of this face right here. I can hit extruded boss base, and now it says I can select a plane, planar face, or an edge on which I want to sketch the feature cross section. So that means I can choose the right plane, front plane, top plane, or I can choose this face right here, which you see it highlights in orange. And I want to sketch on this face because I want my circle to be on this face. So what I'm going to do now is click on circle, and I can click anywhere I want, make my circle, hit escape. Now I want to dimension this circle. I want it to be 0.5 inches, and I want it to be 0.5 inches from that face, which will be right in the center. And I want it to be 0.6 inches from the top. So now it's centered on this dimension and it's 0.6 inches down. There's a bunch of other ways to go about doing that. I'm going to quickly turn off the grid, and planes, I guess, aren't turning off right now. Let's say I don't want to even have to write this dimension in, and I want just people to know that it's centered, or put it at the midpoint. Because sometimes what happens is if I change, well, I'll just show you right now. So let's keep it like that. So now I'm going to make my circle. I'm going to have it come out 0.25 inches. Okay. At this point, I have this circle. But let's say I change my mind and I want to make this triangle feature come out to be 2 inches. Now my circle's still in the middle. In order to fix that, I could go edit sketch, change this dimension to be 1 inch, and it would be in the middle. Or I can delete this dimension, and I can use these relations. So what I'm going to do is hover over this line until I get this little midpoint selection, which you can see from the line with the circle in the middle. I'm going to click on that, and then you can see it has a midpoint created. I'm going to hold Control, click on the center point here. I'm going to make those vertical. So now your circle will be directly under the midpoint, no matter where that midpoint is. Escape. And now a circle's in the midpoint there. If I go in here, I can double click and change dimensions. So I'll go down here, and you see it change dimensions like this. Let's say I make it 4 inches. Check. Hasn't updated yet, so I need to use the rebuild feature. You can also hit Control V. Now it will still be in the center. So that's a very helpful feature. So you want to try to make parts so that if you change dimensions in the future, which typically happens, it's not a ton of work for you to go back and fix everything. And it will automatically update with as little work from you as possible. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there for sketching. So again, you can see there's ways to make lines perpendicular to each other, tangent, midpoint that we just showed, vertical, horizontal, and coincident. Coincident, you can put it at a point or you can put it on a line. Bunch of different options there. This part here is one of the demonstration parts that we made in the workshop. This is a slot. I'll quickly make a slot off of this part here. So say I want to put a slot in this face. Extrude Boss Base. Click on this base right here. And click on slot, you'll see it's going to tell me in what order to click. So again, if you know how to look at it and read these instructions, you can figure out how to make any feature really easily. So I'm going to click 1 point to make the center of one of my arcs. Second point will be the length of the slot, and the third point will choose where or how wide I want the slot to be, or how big it'll be. I'm going to click here, and let's say I want to make it horizontal. You can see it'll lock into place. And let's say I want it to be really wide. From this point, I can hit escape, and now I'll dimension it. Let's say again I want it to be. Let's say I want it to be in the middle of this line. I'll click here, hit Control, hold Control, click this line. Now I'm going to make them coincident. So what this will do is make this line so that it would, if it were to extend out, it would run into this midpoint right here. Check. Now I can dimension slot. There's different ways to dimension it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the length of it. So I can do that by clicking here or in the middle. I'm going to make it 1.5 inches. And let's say I want it, I have to choose the width or the height of it. You can click here and here, or I'm going to escape. You can also click the arc here and choose the radius. So I'm going to make it 0.5, which would be equivalent to a height of 1 inch. And now you can see it's not fully dimensioned yet. So what it wants me to do is tell it where to go in the, or you can see in this plane, the Z direction, so horizontal. A bunch of different ways to do that. One of them is going to be click this point here. Escape. Always escape before you add a new dimension. Sometimes that can be a problem. So I'm going to click on this point here. Click here. And now I can choose how far over I want it to be. So let's say I want it 1 inch over from the side, not centered in that direction. Okay, now you can see fully defined, escape. And now I can choose how far I want it to come out. So 0.45. Okay, so now I've showed you how to extrude features from an initial sketch. And now we're going to go over how to do cut. How do we cut out material from a part? So I'm going to click Extruded Cut. Now I want to cut out a square from this side. So I like to use the rectangle because it's just nice and quick. So I'll go here. And if I want to make a square, the quickest way to do that is click on this line, hit Control, click on this line, and hit Make Equal. That will force them to always be, it'll force this to always be a square. And all I have to do to set the dimensions is just dimension one line. So I'll make it 0.5 inches. Now it's wanting me to determine how far it's going to be from the rest of the geometry. So from this triangle, how far to the side, and how high it's going to be up. So I can do that right now. Make this 0.4. I'll hit escape or exit sketch. And now I get this yellow box. Instead of coming out of the face, it's now going into the face. So there's a chance that you had the sketch going the wrong way, in which case, if your direction is going out of the box and I have an extruded cut and I try to hit check, it's going to give me an error because it doesn't intersect with the model. So therefore you can't cut any material. So I have to flip it, have it go back into the material. If I use blind and choose how far I want it to go. So I don't want to go all the way through, I like to use blind. If you want to go through the whole thing, I have to hit through all. And if there's multiple features here, say I added a slot on this side over here, but I didn't want to go through it, I might hit up to next and it wouldn't go through that slot. Or if you're making a sketch in the middle of a part and you want to go through stuff on both sides of the sketch, you can hit through all both and it will go both directions. You also hit up to surface. So this time, if I want to go up to this surface here, it'll cut to that surface. Or up to body, same thing. Right now, I'm just going to hit up to next, and it will go up to that surface there. You see there's two directions. I don't want that second direction highlighted. Sometimes that will happen. Okay, so now you can see I have a square that runs through the entire shape here. Okay. At this point, this part's starting to get a little messy. So I'm going to probably get out of here. So here are some more options you have when it comes to making different types of parts or different features. Once you have a part made, you can see it has this features. There's a bunch of the features you have available to you. One thing I will do right now is show you guys how to make a mirror. So in order to do that, I'm going to you have to choose a plane which you want to mirror everything about. So right now, I want to take all of these parts and mirror them over this right plane here. So I'm going to hit mirror and choose this plane. And I don't need a secondary face. I want to choose all of the features that I've made. So I want to mirror that. I want to mirror this cut. Let's say I don't want to mirror this circle, but I do want to mirror the slot. I can do that. I'll hit check. Now, so here's what happened is I hit features, now I've had end piece of feature. So instead of doing features, I might instead, if you ever want to delete anything from these light blue boxes, you can click on them and hit delete key, not backspace, but delete. I'm going to click on bodies to mirror instead, and this will just mirror everything for me. But let's say I don't want to do everything. I want to instead do features. One easy way to go about it is you can click on all these different options here. Let's say I don't want to mirror the cut and I want to just keep it like this. Okay. Features instead are just trying not to be created. So right now it's giving me an error, and it seems like I'm going to need to also mirror this part as well. End piece of feature. End piece of feature. I'm going to delete this mirror. Sometimes, again, you have to be very specific with what options you set. So again, it doesn't always, it's a program, so it doesn't always work the exact way you might want it to. Let me try that again. So we'll start by mirroring about this plane here. And I'm going to click on this body, mirror the entire thing. Let's see if that works. Okay, so what I think is happening right now is this feature here is very thin on the bottom edge. It's having a tough time making that because it doesn't like wherever you have a surface, like a thickness of very, very small amounts, it doesn't like to make that. So what I'm going to do instead is change my mirror plane. And I'm going to do it about this plane instead. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so that will work. Because you can see I don't have a really thin surface first. If I did it about this edge right here, we have a really thin part right there. So now I've mirrored everything here. Let's say I want to delete this piece here. Oh, I guess I'll delete the entire thing. So again, you sometimes want to mirror, sometimes you don't want to mirror. But you can play around with it in faces, features, and bodies are different ways you can mirror objects. Let's see, next. So reference geometry is another very important feature in making a part. So if you want to make a more complicated part, sometimes you need to add planes and axes. You don't always need it, but there are definitely times when you might need it. So let's say here I want to put a plane at 45 degrees between the front plane and the right plane. So my first reference will be the front plane, my second reference will be the right plane, and it will now create a new plane it'll automatically create one right in the middle. So you see the mid plane is selected for both of those. Check. Now I have a 45-degree plane. Say I wanted it to be not 45 degrees. Let me delete that and I'll do it again. I'm going to first make an axis. I'm going to start the front plane and the right plane, and you can see the yellow axis that's been created. Now, if I create a plane about the front plane and I click on the axis second, I now have the ability to click on at angle, and I can change what angle this will be at. Let's say I want to make it 25 degrees, I can do so. And if you look from the top, you can use this view orientation feature. So I look at the top, I can see that it is at 25-degree angle. Let's say I want to look at it from an isometric view, which is right here. No, it's not isometric. It would be over here. Or you can always, if you can't figure it out in that little box, this is always really handy over here. So I want to do isometric. Look at that nice view right there. So isometric is this nice view that shows a 3D object really well. But I'm going to check here, and now I have my plane. So if I want to make a sketch on that plane, or say I want to extrude a feature from that plane, I can do that now. So let's say I want to extrude a feature from this plane, and I want to make a circle that goes and meets up with this surface here. What I would do is make this part right here, the circle. So again, I'm not sketching anything at all besides just this plane. So it can be kind of confusing to see that. Again, I'm going to go normal to this plane, much as you can see. I'll make the circle 0.25 inches in diameter. And I want it to be 3 inches from that space there. And I want it to be, or go from this axis that I had set, I want it to be 1.25. That works for me. Escape, or exit sketch. And now you can see it's extruding the wrong way. I want it to intersect with this face here. So I'm going to hit flip, and I can see it goes through that face. Instead of being blind, I'm going to hit up to next or up to surface. So right now I'm going to hit up to next, hit OK. And now I have this cylinder that comes out of the surface. Okay, that's pretty good for that. Let's see, I'm going to go over shell and revolve at the same time, and holes if I can do it then too. Okay, so I don't want this to go too long right now, so I'm going to kind of speed up and go to the next section. So a new part. Now we're going to go over how to make a revolved part. So if you're familiar with machining at all, a revolved part typically would be made on a lathe. So something that is cylindrical,
typically made from a cylindrical stock. So first things first, I'm going to put on the planes. And I'm going to make a revolved slash base. So right now I'll sketch on the right plane. So I'm going to make, again, we want to either start at the origin or have a dimension to the origin. So let's say I want a part with a hole down the middle. I'm going to start close to the origin, but I'm not going to go to the origin itself. Start here. I'll make a weird geometry. Yeah, so let's say I messed up here and I want this to actually be horizontal. Click on this line, click make horizontal, and it will make that line horizontal for me. So let's say I don't want it to be perpendicular anymore. I'll click on it, it turns light blue, and then I can hit the delete key, not backspace, but delete. Now I'm going to start dimensioning everything here. So let's say I want these two lines to be more of an 80-degree angle. I want a little bit of an angle there. I want the distance between the origin and my part to be 0.1 inches at this face. Here, I want the distance to be, let's say, 0.5 inches. Okay. Now, I'm going to choose. So the different ways you can do length. You can do length parallel, or you can do length horizontal, or I can do horizontal, parallel, or vertical. Right now, I'm going to do vertical. 5. Use this length to be 1. And now you can see my sketch is fully defined. So I'm going to hit exit sketch. Now I need to choose an axis of revolution. Okay. So you can see right now, I don't have any of those available. So I want to be able to select this line right here. So unfortunately, I have to X out of the revolve. My sketch is still here, so I can come back to it. But what I need to do is go to Features, Reference Geometry, or I need to X out of the sketch first. Reference Geometry, Axis, boom, boom, and now you have my axis right up the middle. So I'm trying to revolve this sketch 360 degrees around that axis. So I'm going to go back to Revolve Boss Base. And it automatically chose, oh no, it didn't do it right. Let me redo that again. Escape, sketch 1, Revolve Boss Base, Axis of Revolution, right there. And now you can see I have my hole in the middle. So I'm going to hit check. You can see it revolves around that axis in the middle that we created. And I have my part. So let's say I actually don't want it to go off 360 degrees. You can change it. So let's say I don't want it to go, I want it to just go 270 degrees. You can do that there. 99% of the time, you're going to always use 360. So I'll do that for this example. And you can see it meshes everything nicely well. Okay, at this point, I actually want this entire feature to be shelled out. So what I'm going to do now is click on the shell feature. I want every face to be solid besides this top face here. So I'm going to click on this face. And I want the thickness of the shell to be 0.1 inches. And I'm going to show a preview. So and kind of get maybe a quick idea of how it's going to look, but until I hit click, you won't see the full effect of it. So I have now shelled out all of that material. And then get rid of all of those extra things. So I've shelled out all that material, and now I just have this very simple, all the inner material is gone now, so I just have the walls left. If I want to quickly hide this or pretend I didn't do that, there's a way to do that. You can go here and hit hide. Oh, never mind, can't do that. What I have to do is suppress that feature. And now it's like that feature never existed. If I wanted to fully get rid of it, I should always delete it though. So let's say I do want to get rid of it. I don't like the way that works for my part. I can delete it. And that is that. Okay. Let's come back to part 2. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to again get rid of all these planes and axes for right now. Right now, I'm going to show a feature called Hole Wizard. First things first, I want to make this part a little bit thicker. So to do that, edit feature, and I'm going to make it 1 inch thick. Now you can see when I did that, that other part got completely swallowed up. So if I want that to still exist, I can do a couple things here. Number 1, I can edit the feature and I can flip it. Might give me some errors because now my feature is going in the opposite way. So I need to flip its direction, and now we'll go back and connect with the body itself. So now I have more of the part I was looking for. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to show something called the Hole Wizard. This is really nice if you're trying to make a tapped hole. So basically a tapped hole, something with a hole with threads in it for a machinist. Or if you're making a hole for a countersink in a metal part, and you want a machinist to use a certain countersink bit. These are all available options. So we'll start with a counterbore. Let's say I want to do it for socket head cap screw. Of size, let's see, the screw I'm using for this part is going to be a size 6 screw. I want a normal fit. That is just changes the dimensions slightly. So if you choose close, it'll be a lot tighter when you put the screw in. If you use loose, there'll be a lot more space. And condition, I'll do through all for right now. And that's going to be all we're going to do right now. Okay, now position. So this is going to bring you to a sketch. So it's like the face for the hole or slot position. I want it to be on this bottom face. Actually, that's not true. Escape. Positions. And I'm going to put it on this top face actually. So I want it to be centered right here. So what I can do is hover, after I click it, I hit escape. And I want it to be centered on this line here. So I'm trying to get that midpoint to pop up. You kind of need to drag over a certain part for a bit. I might have to go here, add relation. Click on this. And hit mid, so let's bring it in the midpoint. So what happened is I already had 0.1 selected, which is the point of the center of where this hole is going to go that I'm making. So I need to delete that point first. So go back here. Okay, so I ended up putting this at the midpoint, which is why it went wrong. So I'm going to go back here, everything's good. Choose a new one, I'm gonna redo that. So here, escape, I'm gonna hit escape again so that that blue highlight goes away, which doesn't look like it wants to. So I have a couple options here. I can do a center line. I can start from this point here and drag all the way down to the center midpoint over here. And then I can make another center line. So center line won't actually come up in the drawings at all, which is nice. Or it might come up with the drawings, but it's not going to actually come up on the part, so it won't end up being a real 3D, like it won't show up after we get out of this sketch. I'm now going to click on the center point here, hold Control, click on midpoint right here, and I'm going to hit coincide it. Now it's right in the center of that part. So I'm going to hit check, and you can see a counterbore hole has been made, and it goes through this part here. And you can see there's a call out, so it tells you, it tells the machinist when you make a drawing of this part, it tells the machinist what to do as far as what size to drill. So from this point, I'm going to make one quick tapped hole. Actually, no, we'll do that in the Assemblies feature. We'll do that later. Okay. So now I'm going to, in order to keep my computer from not dying on me, I'm going to get rid of all of these. It's going to ask me to save. I'm not going to save them. Obviously, if you're making a real part, you want to save it, and you want to make sure you're aware of what folder you're saving everything to. Very important to do that. Okay, now I'm back to my home screen. So there's a couple other things that I didn't go over. Just quickly go over right now. So there's some more advanced features called Loft and Sweep. They're not typically used due to the fact that it's very hard to make a loft or a sweep. But I can quickly cover them right now. I need to allow that to be on, so I want to be able to see my planes. I'm going to sketch on the front plane, just a very basic rectangle. And right now I'm not going to mention, which is obviously bad practice, but I don't want to waste time. Now I'm going to go to Features, Reference Geometry, make a new plane. I want this plane to be a certain distance from the original plane. So I want it to be 3 inches from that original plane. Now I'm going to sketch again on this plane 1, and I'm going to sketch a circle. Again, I'm not dimensioning it right now. In real life, you'd always dimension. I'm just trying to speed this process up. Okay, so now if I were to want a part, if you see this lofted boss / base, you see it turns from a square cross section to a circular cross section. It adds material between 2 or more profiles to create a solid feature. What I'm going to do now is choose the 2 profiles, one being here, the other being there. Now you can see it's showing me already a preview for the part that it's going to make. So it starts from a rectangle and turns into a circle. If I were to drag this point around, it twists the shape a little bit. So say I wanted to, if I don't want that, I go here. I want to add a little bit of twist, and I go like this. There are start and end constraints. So if you want it to start normal to the profile, you can do so. End constraint, normal to profile, you can do so. See how it kind of blows it up a little bit. So it starts normal and then it sweeps in. Bunch of different options you have there, direction vectors. I'm not even gonna get into that right now, but there's a bunch of different options you have. Also guide curves, which again, I'm not gonna get into right now. You can watch YouTube videos on Lofts if you want to do more of it, but bunch of different options you can do here. You can add you can change the angle. So if I put this plane at an angle, you can kind of think it would curve around as you move through. And that's how lofts work. Sweeps are pretty similar. Essentially, you don't typically change the cross section as much as you do at a loft. But basically, you can make something that looks like a pipe twisting all around through a part, or you can make a part where it has like a pipe that's twisting all around, kind of like this little icon here. Other pretty important things are, I'm going to show right now, would be fillets and chamfers. So a fillet, again, we made one earlier. Right now, you have different options when you're in the part mode. So you can do it while you're sketching, or you can do it after you sketch. So right now, it's giving me different options. So I can choose this part right here, and it gives me a preview right away if I want to make the radius bigger. And here, here, and here. Let's see what happens. And now it'll fillet all of those different edges that I selected. And now they're all nice and round. So that's another thing you can do in the part function mode. Drafts and intersects are super important. I haven't really used them too much. Reference geometry we went over. Curves I have never really used. Patterns are pretty useful. We're not going to get into that today. Essentially, you can make different types of patterns. Typically, you only can use linear or circular. Obviously, make like a 2x2, 2x3, or you can make a row of things. Circular, you choose your center point, and you can choose the amount of features that go around that center point. So you can have like 10 circles on a face, or 10 cylinders on like a box, and they all go around the center point of that box. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up here, and now we're gonna get into assembly stuff. So at this point, we've gone over. Okay, so we went over saving files too. So these are some different 3D parts you can practice on your own if you would like. These are some much more complicated parts. So these ones require so I can show this. Very helpful. So you can see this 3-R. That means that it's a pattern, and there's 3 radiuses of 68 should be inches. So this part would be 60 inches, this part would be 60 inches, and that part would be 60 inches. So whenever you see a 3 times or a 3 dash, it means that it's being repeated. So every 3 dash, diameter 18. So every single one of these holes, or 4 dash, every single one of these holes is going to be 18 inches in diameter, or millimeters, whatever it might be. Typically, you very rarely see a drawing in an isometric view like this. It's always going to, almost always going to be in a 2D view, usually multiple 2D views, like this one, 1, 2, 3. This one only has 2, because it's a slightly more simple part. But these are all things that you guys should try to make on your own for practice. Okay, assembly features. What I'm going to go over right now is how do you make all these different parts together into something called an assembly, which can move and be interactive. Probably one of the coolest features about Solidworks is the assembly features. So you need to start with a part first and foremost. So I've already created these different parts that I'm going to reference here and use. But I'm going to start with this base plate that I made already. So you can import a part. You just click and it will import it for you. Insert components on the assembly tab. And if it doesn't automatically open the browser, you can hit browse right here. if there's any parts you have open, they pop up in this little square window right there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is click browse, insert, I call it square one. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and drop it over here because I want to get this square with its circular cutout to be rotating about this little post right here. So that would require something called a concentric mate. So in order to do that, I'm going to select the inner face here and the outer face of this post. Concentric, I'm not going to lock the rotation because I want it to move, and also that's never realistic. When you actually make a part, you can't just lock its rotation. You have to create some kind of mechanical function to stop it from rotating. So again, concentric mate here. I'm going to show you guys now what that looks like. So again, it's fixed about the two axes of the post and the circular cutout square are parallel or not parallel, they're coincident, they're like locked onto each other. So I can't move it out of that orientation. However, it's not really locked onto the post where I want it to be. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it coincident with this bottom face here. So I'm going to click on the bottom face, to the top face of the plate, and then the bottom face of this square. And now you see it can't go up and down, but it can still rotate in circles. If I want to stop it from rotating, I can click on this face here and this face here and choose parallel or perpendicular. Again, you can do it over here or it will pop up. So right now I'll do parallel. So those two faces will be parallel, as you can see. The green check. Now, if I want to make a second one of those, let's say I want to make another one and put it over here. Instead of going in, hitting insert component, all that stuff, you can hold control, click on a part, and drag it to make it come over here. So you can see it keeps trying to do these little icons pop up, which is basically saying that it's a mate. So it keeps wanting to mate the blue face, which I highlighted. When I clicked on the part, it keeps wanting to mate that face to top plate here. If I hold it over here, it just has that yellow icon, which is the Solidworks part icon. I'm going to do that for now because I don't want it to mate it to anything. So again, mate, I'm going to make this. So what happened there is I already had that face selected. So this face right here, I already had it selected. So I clicked on it. It's already trying to mate those two faces together. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to click on this face, delete. And I want it to mate to this face over here. So I want it to be concentric, which is concentric. Check. Now, at this point, I have a bunch of different options here. But first, I want to quickly show another feature called Float Fix. So in order to get rid of this mate, I can delete it from this. I can hit delete right now, or I can get out of here. And if I want to delete any of the mates here, I can click on them one by one. Right now, it wants me to rebuild. So I'll do that. Delete this mate right here. And now I'm going to show something called Float and Fix. So what you can see by looking at all of these different features here is they each have different little icons in front. So this one has a little F in front. That F within the parentheses means fixed. So it is locked in space and you cannot move it around. So if I drag on it, I can't move it around. It's fixed, can't be moved. This part has nothing next to it. So that's because it's fully defined and it cannot be moved. This part over here has a little dash. That dash means that it's floating and it's not fully defined. So I can drag it around as much as I want. And it will just move. So if I want to fix it, in space. Now I can't move it. However, it's not very realistic, so I'm gonna keep it as a float in 1 second after I make this float. Now I can show you I can move this around in respect to this, which will not move when I have it fixed. But I'm gonna go and make this part here fixed because that's my base plate, and I'm gonna keep this to float. So that's just something to make sure you have. Typically your base plate or whatever your initial part that you're building everything off of, assembling everything off of, you want that to be fixed and keep everything else as a float. Related mates, you define where they should go in relation to that fixed part. Okay. I'm gonna go back to the mates. I'm gonna make this tall post and this circle to be concentric. Now I'm gonna do a distance mate. So let's say I don't want this face to be touching this face. Instead of clicking on them and they automatically turn to coincident, there's something called distance mate. So I can choose how far apart I want them to be. I can move it further apart, closer. There's the option to flip the dimension, so it puts it in the other direction. So if I go there, it's going to keep moving it out. But that's not really what I want, so I'm going to flip the dimension back. I can also change this mate alignment. I'm going to hit don't show again. And I can just keep flipping this around. So this face, these two faces I have highlighted in blue are going to always stay 1.6 inches away from each other, but the rest of the square piece will flip around as I choose so. Okay. At this point, I'm going to hit OK. And I still want it to be able to rotate, so I'm going to keep it right there. Now, I am going to import another part, another component called the roller. So right now, if I don't want it in this particular orientation and I want to move it around, if I hit the tab key, I can get it to rotate. So right now, I can get it to rotate about the X direction by hitting tab. I can also change it to rotate about the Y direction or the Z direction. Again, you can see all of these in the bottom left corner on these axes. So I actually do want it to be in this correct orientation right here. Another way to change the way it rotates is you can hit rotate in each direction, rotate Z, Y, and X. But right now I'm going to put it right there. Okay, I'm going to show you now how to do a tangent mate. So a tangent mate, again, is between a flat surface or an edge and a cylindrical or spherical surface. So this tangent mate automatically gets selected because it knows that's pretty much your only option here. You can also do a distance mate, but your options are limited when selecting these two. So I want that to work just like this, so I'm okay with that. Again, you can see it kind of moves along the surface like so. So right now it looks like it's off the surface, but it's actually just really far away. If I bring it back, now it'll kind of be more like where we want it to be. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate one of the more advanced mates under advanced called the path mate. So it's asking me to find the vertex. And when I made this part, I made a point, I sketched a point right at the center. So that's what we're going to use for the vertex. The vertex has to be a point. And then it's also asking me to choose the path. I'm going to choose this path here.
And now I'm gonna hit OK. Click out of here. And if I were to rebuild this feature, so rebuild. When I hit rebuild, I'm going to get an error because you can see that this vertex is no longer on this path itself. It doesn't stop me from moving off the path, but when it's off the path and I rebuild, I get an error. And it's saying it's 1.9 inches off the path. So that means this between here and here is 1.9 inches. So I'm going to move it back onto the path, hit rebuild again, and I no longer get that error. Now I'm going to add let's say I don't even want to allow it to go off the path though. I can add a mate called like a distance mate. So it basically allows it to move anywhere within the distance. Do an advanced distance. It's going to give me two options here. So when I click on the distance mate, it gives me a maximum value and a minimum value. My maximum value is going to be 5 inches. And my minimum value is going to be 0 inches. I'm going to hit OK or check. And now, maybe not. Oh, I didn't even select the 2 points. Okay, so I tried to make a mate, but I didn't even select the two things that I was mating. So, sorry, let me do it again. So my two selections are going to be the center point here, because this entire line is 10 inches long. So I have to choose a center point here. The distance between here and here is 5 inches. So I'm going to choose those 2 points. I have a maximum of 5 inches. It can't move anywhere past this point or anywhere past this point. 5 inches, 0 inches. I'm going to hit OK. Yeah, you can see that mate got created. I actually chose 2 options for it. And now you can see it can't move anywhere further than those 2. Okay. Now let's say I want it to stay in this orientation where it is basically parallel to this face and this face. So there's a bunch of different ways I can do that. But one of them is called the width mate. So if I were to completely delete our path mate right now, which now you no longer theoretically need, except you do, because now it can move 5 inches in any direction, not just along the line. There's another way I could keep it so that it's centered, or it keeps it along the path, and also so that this face is parallel to this face. So there's a mate called the width mate. I go to advanced, width, gives me 2 width selections, and I want the widths to be this face here and this face here. I want my tabs to be this face here and this face here. So that's going to keep it, because my constraint is centered, and keep it centered between those 2 faces. So what you get is the same thing before with less mates. So instead of having to add the path mate and the parallel mate, I can just add the width mate. And that will keep everything on that path where I want it to move. Okay. Now I'm going to go over slot mate with the slot at the bottom here. So I'm going to import my roller, or no, my pin. And I'm going to hit tab to rotate it. You can see that didn't rotate in the right direction that I want. I want it to rotate about the X direction. So now I have it in the orientation I would like. I'm now going to go over the slot mate. So mate, You can see I don't see a slot mate here. I'm going to go to mechanical. In mechanical, I have an option for a slot. I'm going to first click on this roller for the pin, and then I'm going to click on one of the surfaces, and you can see it automatically in green highlights the other surfaces of the slot. I'm going to keep it as free, and I'm not going to lock its rotation. At this point, what I'm going to do is import a cap for the end of this slot. Insert components, cap, open, and my opening is over there, so I want it to go below. Now I want to make a second cap, so I'm going to hold Control, click on it, drag, and it will make a second cap. Now I'm going to make these concentric and coincident to the pin. So I'm going to highlight that surface and that surface to make them concentric. It's automatically selected for me, so I didn't need to do anything else. Now I'm going to select this face and the face at the bottom here. So now that's fully seated in the pin. See if I move this, it moves with it. So now they move together, which is good. Now I'm going to go over, I'm going to mate this to this in a concentric mate. Check. And now I want this face to mate to this face. Now you can see it's the wrong orientation, so what I'm going to do is hit flip mate alignment, and now it's the correct orientation. Okay. Now I have the opportunity to get this so that it's at a nice width and it has a little bit of a gap on each side, which might be how you want to actually make it if you wanted to make a slot with two caps like this. So I'm going to do another width mate. Advanced width. My width selections are going to be this face here and this face here, while my tab selections will be this face and this face. Hit check. Now, if I change my view orientation to this side, you can see it's an even distribution on both sides, and you can't move them side to side at all. And now this rotates and slides freely in the slot, can't go out of the slot. And there's a nice little gap on each side. Let's say we wanted to measure that gap. There's a tool called, you go to the Evaluate tab, there's a tool called Measure. Very helpful tool. I use very often. So I might click on this face here. And you see it's a little difficult to click on the face underneath. So there's a couple options I can do. What I'm going to show you now is how to make something transparent. So let's say I can't really click on the underside of that cap. I can click here, change transparency to make it semi-transparent. So now when I hit measure, it's very easy to, first and foremost, click on this top face. Then I can see through the part and click onto that face. Click around to these drop-down arrows. I can click on point to point, which is what I had selected, change the units, and you can show X, Y, and Z measurements. So what that will do, it brings a lot of cluttered options for me, but I want to see the distance in the Y direction. So I can see dy is 0.05 inches. So I have a 0.05 inch gap on either side, which depending on what you're designing for, that might be what you're looking for. You might want it to be smaller or larger, in which case you could change the length of this pin to change the gap you have. or change the height of the caps, or change the thickness of your base plate. Now at this point, let's say I'm happy with this assembly and now I want to send it off to someone else on my team. What I can do is hit File and Pack and Go. Basically what a Pack and Go, continue to build and save. Oh, I have to save the second first. So I'm going to save this assembly here. Name assembly. Okay. So now it's going to bring up after I save the part. So I'm going to hit File, everything's saved and updated, Pack and Go. And now I'm able to put all of the files that I'm working on. So say they're spread out across multiple folders. In this case, they're all in the same folder, but if they were in different folders and I want to make sure that all of the mates that I made get transferred over to the new person's computer, when they open it up, I'm going to use a Pack and Go. So basically what this allows is it's going to download all of the parts that are referenced on the assembly that you're working on, put all those parts with the assembly into one folder, which you can save to a zip file also if you want to compress it to make it easier to share, or you can just save it to a folder that's maybe a shared folder, or you can save it to a folder and then zip it yourself, or save it to a folder and upload it to Google Drive, whatever you want to do. Save it to one folder, and this makes sure that they're able to open the assembly. Because what happens when you try to open an assembly, if you don't have one or more of the parts of that assembly, it doesn't allow you to open the full assembly. So let's say I tried to open this assembly, but I didn't have the base plate. I wouldn't be able to see anything besides the cap, pin, roller, and the square. So I wouldn't really be able to see the full assembly, which wouldn't really allow me to work on the assembly. So whenever you're sharing assemblies with multiple people, you want to make sure you always Pack and Go it. So I can unfortunately, Zoom is making this kind of difficult, but yeah. So on my current computer, you can kind of see I'm having a very difficult time being able to access everything here. You can see I can kind of see the save, cancel, and help, but for some reason this window is opening, so it's too tall, so I'm not really able. I can click on it barely. That shouldn't happen. I don't know why my computer's bugging out right now, but I can choose where I want to save it. I can make it into a zip file and save it there. You can share it. I typically recommend putting it in a zip file. If you want to include any drawings that you made, you can do that too at this point. Okay. So that's pretty much the tutorial for today. If you want to learn how to make drawings, I'm sorry I wasn't able to go over that. But it's pretty easy. You can learn online. You just look at some YouTube videos. Okay. Thank you for watching today's tutorial. Hopefully you learned something. Feel free to reach out with any questions if you have them. My email is mrb8339@miami.edu. Yeah, feel free to reach out.